I get on a call with a client who I'd been working with for probably 2 years. And at the end of the call, he says, Eric, can I just take a minute? I just want you to know you're different. He said, as leaders, your greatest authority comes not from your intellect or even the credentials that you've accumulated over the years. Well, the way that we say this now in our space is we can only give to others what we first cultivate internally.
Welcome to the Tyler Dickerhoof Show with me, your host, Tyler Dickerhoof. Today, I have my friend Eric Pfeiffer. Eric is the principal with MPWR Coaching. He has a new book. It's called Upgrade Your Leadership out. He and I were just talking. He has, there you go. There you see it right in front of you. You're watching on YouTube. Eric, we were just catching up, telling stories. And you started down a path, and I wanted to ask this question. Because you talked about how just through your leadership journey, being involved in the church world, coaching, leadership coaching, all the things. And you were talking about how you were, in ways medicated through that pain, right? Through whatever. How did that affect you as a leader? See, you understand now why I wanted to hit record, right? It's good. It's good. If you're watching and Eric pauses and takes this deep reflective look to his left, takes off his glasses. If you're not watching on YouTube, you need to watch it. Continues to just scratch his beard because he's like, holy shit, Tyler. Oh, I love you, man. But you just asked the questions that get right here.
Yeah.
Right.
And
here,
I love
right?
it.
Is that
love
fair?
it. Yeah, it's totally fair, man. Absolutely. We need more of these conversations out there in the world anyways. How did it affect me? Let me say this. There's two ways I would want to talk about that journey, this part of my journey. Yeah. Maybe three angles. The first angle is, a lot of the story, so I won't belabor it, but for your listeners, it worked in and with the church world for 20 years. And the last experience was just heartbreaking and painful. And there's a lot of loss, and which then means there's the whole grieving process, of which I understand, but resist at all cost at times. Really engaging and embracing the grieving process. And then simultaneously towards the end of the church work, I had started this coaching business, primarily working in the corporate space, and it was growing leaps and bounds. And I had a couple of business partners. And then a few years in, it became clear that those partnerships weren't going to work. Yeah. And so we had to transition. And so that, heaping on top of all of the pain that I wasn't dealing with coming out of the work with the church, then pile on top of that the loss now of these really valuable relationships, because it ended amicably, but sadly did cause some up to this point, some irreparable damage to the relationships. And in the midst of all that, even though what I do for a profession is working with, in previous times, primarily Christian leaders in the church world, and now with high level leaders in corporate America or, professional sports or whatever. Even though I work with people, I'm a human being. And so what I didn't realize is that little by little, not knowing what to do with all that pain and loss, resisting the grieving process, feeling this desperate desire to just move on, I found myself medicating the pain, the stress, the hurt through alcohol. I was medicating through, pornography at times, anything that would allow, golf. I was, playing excessively, playing golf, traveling, just finding reasons to travel, but not really owning that those were all really escape mechanisms. Yeah. They were just ways for me to numb out so that I didn't have to really deal with the pain. So long story short, I my wife lovingly, and I write about this in one of my books, lovingly brought it to my attention that this wasn't working, that this was impacting now, not just me, but now this was deeply impacting the way I was engaging with my marriage, my adult kids, other friends, and clients. And so when she brought that to my attention, I realized, okay, I've got one of two choices. I'm either going to throw away so much of what I've worked for, or I'm going to do the hard work. And I chose the hard work, thankfully, and got into some great counseling, which then eventually led to some marriage counseling with my wife, which was fantastic, phenomenal. But all of that was just me creating the necessary space to start really dealing with all of this loss and pain that had been compounding for years. Because my natural wiring personality is like, oh, okay, that sucked. That was hard. Okay, but we're okay. We're still alive. Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And just kind of throw ourselves in that. But this was a kind of a juncture of life where I realized that's not going to work. Not now, and it's definitely not going to serve me long term. So did a lot of the work. It took, I tell people it took probably 1.5 to 2 years of doing that work. That allowed me to either heal from some past wounds and pain, and for really processing through what I'd experienced and how that had impacted me, owning the way that out of all that I was now projecting my pain, hurt, frustration onto the people I loved the most, which is always the great irony of our pain, is we end up hurting the people that we love the most. But then little by little, fighting for reconciliation within my marriage. And I'm proud to say that we're now 1 year into feeling like we're on the other side of a lot of that. My adult kids, who I had to do some work with, they're 22 and 20 now, but, creating space for them to let me know how I was impacting them. And then it was really interesting. This is a funny story, not a funny story, just a really illuminating. I'm probably, maybe last summer sometimes, I'm months into my own personal rehabilitation process. And I get on a call with a client who I'd been working with for probably 2 years. And at the end of the call, he says, Eric, can I just take a minute? I just want you to know you're different. And I said, what do you mean? And this person does not have, they're not overtly spiritual, religious, any of that stuff, right? And so they just said, hey, I just want you to know, like, you just show up to our calls different. Your energy's different. Your clarity, your focus, the way that you're partnering me in through my challenges just feels qualitatively different. And I was shocked. Because, there's always this part of you that hopes that nobody else really feels the effects of your own brokenness and dysfunction. But I said to him, do you mind if I take a few minutes to share with you what I've been through? He said, sure. So I shared as best I could in short order. And they said, Eric, thank you for sharing that. It's so nice to know that you're still on your journey and you're fighting for the same things that you coach other people to fight for. Number two, he said, I'm so inspired because as I'm doing the work, I want to know that what comes out on the other side. And this is what you're providing is a picture of what I can put my hope in areas of his particular life. And third, he just said, I just want you to know, like, this just increases my level of respect and appreciation for who you are as an executive coach. And my greatest fear as a leader, as a coach, is that my own struggles will somehow disqualify me from being able to serve other people. When in fact, even though I've learned this in the past, it was a reminder to me that actually my willingness to do the hard work, even though it's messy and ugly, and it does at times have consequences, is actually what fuels my integrity to be able to serve and partner with other people who are going through similar challenges. And so again, it was just, it's been a very powerful season. And I tell people all the time, this was one season. I've been through similar seasons in the past because we're always dealing with stuff in our life. But I'm glad to be able to say, here was another trip around the track of having to do my own hard work and seeing the benefits, the incredible benefits that come out on the other side.
Hey, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I imagine when you know, click, the link to come here and chat with me, you didn't expect, well, we're going to start there. But I think you've been around me long enough to know that I'm going to, ask the questions that get to the heart. And man,
Yeah.
what I didn't expect, but yet I appreciate so much is everything that you shared, and the vulnerability and releasing drew more connection, not less.
Hmm.
And I think that is something, whether we can talk about upgrade your leadership or whatever you're doing, man, I think we're in so much in the world where if we can connect deeper with people
Hmm.
rather than creating this separation by ideologies or,
Yeah.
platitudes, that's when we can draw the trust and actually lead people.
Yeah. Yeah. But let me just say this. So this goes back now 20 plus years. I remember as a young leader, I had this mentor who said to me, it was during my master's program, and I was studying organizational leadership with this particular professor that I loved, and he said this comment in our class, and I remember thinking, I don't know what that means, but it sounds important, but I'm going to hold on to it. He said, as leaders, your greatest authority comes not from your intellect or even the credentials that you've accumulated over the years. He said, your authority as a leader will always reflect the deep inner work that you do on yourself. And I remember thinking,
What
because,
do you
as a leader,
postulate? Yeah, what do you postulate that really means?
well, the way that we say this now in our space is we can only give to others what we first cultivate internally. And I think when you talk about ideologies, or, we read all these books and consume all this content, and I have no doubt that the vast majority of that content is great content. But the problem is it's one thing to read that and consume it and try to synthesize it and then integrate it into some new ideas or strategies in our lives, our leadership, our organizations, our families, whatever. It's a whole nother thing to do the deep work of integrating that into who we are as human beings. And so I have found, and it has checked true in my experience and the experience of people that I've had the privilege of working with, that it's our willingness to constantly be on the journey of becoming a better version of ourselves, right? Dealing with our
Mhm.
hangups, our habits, our dysfunctions, brokenness, all that stuff, fears, insecurities, that actually catalyzes a greater degree of authority, because now we're
Yeah,
operating, speaking, leading from the overflow of our own journey. And I think that's, if I'm honest, I think that's what these emerging generations are actually crying out for. Don't give
absolutely.
me another good idea. Like, please show me how you've worked through these really difficult challenges of life and leadership.
You know, it whether my own conversations the last day or two that tie right into this, with, it's just person of faith, and so I understand that's how it comes about. But it's this yearning for life is hard. Just, just help me understand that I can get through hard.
Yeah.
And that's what I think you just shared as a friend, but also a handful of years older, just a couple steps ahead of me. Is like, Tyler, keep doing what you're doing. Meaning keep showing up authentically, vulnerably, be willing to show people it's not easy, but I'm willing to do the hard. And I didn't get willing to do the hard because all of a sudden one day I went from, couch to a 5K. I got up, I did, a couple steps and just continued to work the path, and not like, and I think that's what's hard is we see actors so many actors in our world that want to be on stages, sit behind desks with cameras on them, and everything's perfect, and say, man, I got it all figured out.
Yeah.
And then you're like, do you really? Because if
Yeah.
you told me I'm a hot freaking mess, like what I could share with you, and I'm not calling you a hot mess, but just kind
No,
of,
I
what you
can be.
just what you just shared, it's like, okay, now I can relate to that. Because when I go and, and I got to, talk to my sons, or like the other day, it's just my son, we had a conversation about timeliness. how important timeliness is. As a 17-year-old, he's learning this. And like, no, when you say you're going to do something, you need to do it now, not when you get to, because timeliness matters. And he's so funny because he's such a responsible, hardworking kid. But if it's on his time, yeah. And when it's on my time, no. But we're learning the lesson.
Yeah.
And as I reflect on that, it's like, I can't be mad at him. He's only expressing what he's learned.
That's right.
That's on me of like, oh, I need to do a better job in more control and not blowing up to say it's important and always important. And I think that's what we have, this disconnectedness in leadership in our world, and everyone that is being led, from me, you, and anyone else, is just yearning for someone to come alongside of us and put their arm around us and say, hey, let's do this together.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think that's the dissonance that we all feel when we're watching the news and we're paying attention to politics, and we're seeing these authority figures in different contexts in our culture. The dissonance is not when we hear that people have made mistakes and said dumb things or posted dumb things or engaged in activities that they might now regret at this time in their life. It's this kind of glossing over this lack of authenticity and honesty to say, yeah, I effed up. I'm not the same person today that I was 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. I've grown, I've transformed, I've changed. But it's I think whether through social media or through what we see in other, major media outlets, what everybody, like you said, presents is this polished product, but that's not reality.
No.
And people, I think, are looking for not people that are just a hot mess, but people who are willing to acknowledge when they're a hot mess, who are fighting for something greater, and then who are willing to turn around and say, this is what I've learned about making that journey. And I think, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, what I think is so paramount there is the difference between thinking everything is stacked against you as opposed to no. It's an uphill climb for everyone. No one out there, to use a term that my good friend Robbie Emery will like, but I hate, is some people were born on third base. Yeah. But they still had to run home.
Yeah, that's right.
Just because I ran all 4 bases or you ran, we all had to run. Now, it takes putting one foot in front of the other. Like, I can't be upset the guy that, was on third base and I'm over here on first. And like, we both got to run.
That's
and
right.
so instead of making a narrative that, oh, they have it better. No.
That's right.
Everyone's got to do something hard. And my hard may look different than your hard. But yet, if I can look at it and say, oh, Eric, I'm going through some hard stuff. And you're like, Tyler, yeah, I've gone through some hard stuff too, but I believe in you. And, I can help you because what little bit I know, or maybe I know someone that can help you, or I'm here to walk alongside you. And I have to think so much, that example that you shared with your client, that when you were willing to just pull back the curtains a little bit, that they were able to say, oh, this guy is real.
Yeah.
I can do what he's telling me.
Well, and that I work with family offices, leaders, owner operators, people who are worth tons of money, who have, their sons and daughters who are coming into their business at this point.
Yeah.
And when people say, oh, you were born on third base, that could represent you were born financially with some benefits. You were born maybe in a healthier household where your parents are still married, or, maybe lacked some of the dysfunctions that other people have experienced. But here's what I'm no longer shocked by this, but it did in the beginning, is that in working with all of these people, whether they're considered celebrities or whatever, is that people are people. Life is hard, and everybody has to run their own race. Everybody has to move in a direction that is hopefully taking them into greater things. And so everybody has to do the work. And so what I've come to recognize is the more that we can, because we're a comparative society, we want to compare ourselves to everybody around us. And are they further than me, or higher than me, or better than me, or better looking, or more athletic, or more smarter, more successful in business? At the end of the day, it's like, okay, fine, but that's still a human being you're talking about. and they're still having to work through all of their own challenges and do the hard work and take personal responsibility and learn how to impact their environment more effectively. Because at the end of the day, no matter where somebody starts, there's still so much more to go in the journey of life, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint, as we say. And no person, regardless of where they started in life, is exempt from the challenges that you and I are talking about. They might come in different packages. They might represent or reflect different upbringings, but the reality is every person is on this journey. I think the more we wake up to this is a human reality, that we're all in this together, I think what it does is it levels the playing field and it allows us to see each other. Because I can't tell you how many people are like, oh, well, I bet these clients you work with who have all this money or own all these things, I'll bet you they don't deal with this stuff anymore. And I said, are you kidding me? Like, they're dealing with the same exact drama, dysfunctions, challenges, and communication and conflict engagement. And how do we make decisions together? How do we, whatever it is, same stuff. Just it's all it is maybe a different scale in terms of what's at stake. That's it.
I don't know if it's my personal growth or it's notwithstanding from the personal growth that I've dedicated myself to, but I think there's also a willingness to engage in a time frame, age frame of that, kind of that maturity of what you just shared of like, dude, everyone's got to go through something. And again, I'm contemplating, as you're saying, is like, is it the work that I've done for personal growth, or is it the age? Well, you and I both know there's plenty of people our age that, are sitting around pointing fingers, blaming, as opposed to everyone's like, people our age are like, nah, everyone's got problems. Everyone's got it. And so it brings me back to the forward of saying, no, it's the work of doing the personal growth. But I think couple that with having some of those more time over time, realizing, dude, it's all the same circle.
That's right.
You just go around the corkscrew another time.
That's right. That's right. And regardless of where we are in our journey of whatever we consider success,
Yeah.
those who do the work continue to grow and continue to experience greater breakthroughs, and their trajectory continues to be upward. And those who stop doing the work or who are unwilling to do the work, it's the opposite. Their trajectory starts to go in a downward spiral. It doesn't matter how much money they have or cars they own or where they live or what they were born into or not born into. I tell people it's the same journey for all of us. Are we willing to do the work, to be transformed so that we can become more of an asset to ourselves, to the environment around us? That's what leads to the breakthroughs and all of the benefits that we're longing for. But instead, the temptation, I know for myself and for other people, we can easily succumb to this temptation of comparing ourselves to other people. Well, this isn't fair. And I wasn't born into this kind of family, or I didn't have these benefits, or I didn't have this opportunity. And we use these as excuses rather than saying, hey, I've got my life, one life to live. And when am I going to wake up to the fact that I'm the only person who gets to choose this pathway of transformation and a changed trajectory? Nobody else can choose it for me. My parents can't choose it for me anymore. My boss isn't going to choose it for me. My spouse isn't going to choose it for me, right? Politics, society is not going to choose it for me. And I think for me personally, like what's at the very core of everything we're talking about is the battle for each one of us to take 100% personal responsibility for this is my journey. And I'm the only person who can be responsible for it. And I'm the only person who can choose to do the work to make the most out of this journey that I can. That's it. And the moment we not only make that choice, because we have to make that choice over and over and every day, and sometimes multiple times every day, what it does is it actually sets us free from what I call the prison of excuses and projection and blame that actually is a form of prison. It's like, I remember talking to a client one time and I said, listen, you're blaming your executive team. This is an owner operator of a large company. So you're blaming your executive team, the board, you're mad at this, you're mad at the war in Ukraine because that's impacting your supply chain. You're mad at these people. You're mad at Donald Trump because, he's affecting with tariffs. I said, okay, but here's the thing. At the end of the day, that's a prison that you're sitting in, waiting for everybody else to change so that your life can be better. But here's the problem. You're waiting for them to change because you think they're the key that's going to unlock the jail door to let you out. When the fact is, all the while, at some point, you're going to realize that key to your freedom is in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And you and only you can choose to use that key to unlock the door and set yourself free. And when people choose that as a lifestyle, oh, Tyler, it's what you're talking about. It's what I'm talking about. It's what
Yeah.
we're fighting for.
Yeah. It's you. You are building the walls that hold you in. It's your choice. You are choosing. I mean, I decided to bring this up. I had a friend. He shared this today on social media, and it's a good conversation. I want to have you because it really ties to what we're talking about, and I want to share this with you. But I want you to give me some feedback, like either how you would deal with this or just conversation. And he goes, "This is my friend." He goes, "I'm eternally stuck between offering grace to people who complain and telling them to suck it up and do the work they're avoiding. I'm torn between the urge to lift them up and impulse to hand them a mirror so they can see the real problem while I put a boot in their ass." Now, this is my response. I'm like, our job is to do both, is to put our arms around them and lift them up.
Yeah.
And through that, hold them accountable and say, you're better than this, do the work. And ironically, I'll share kind of the conversation a little bit because it's informative, but you shook your head at that. Give me your take on, either the both or the response to it.
Okay. I'll throw out a couple of thoughts and then we can play with this because I think it's a really important conversation. Let me say this a few ways. Number one, the old adage, you can lead a horse to the water, you can't make it drink, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to understand that we can do everything we can to support people and to empower them and to resource them with the opportunity to get to the water. But at some point, they've got to make a choice that they want to change, they want to do the work, they want to grow. The analogy, and this may be really helpful for listeners because it's been so helpful for me and the clients I work with. As I said, when you're working with other people, you're trying to partner. This could be in your family, it could be your friends, it could be your extended family, it could be with coworkers. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
When we identify in somebody else an opportunity for them to grow and do some work, what I tell people is I remind them of a story when I was young and I had some chores. I had to go in the backyard during the summer in Southern California and pull weeds. And Southern California is very dry. And so what happens is the ground is incredibly hard. And so my brother and I would go out and we'd pull the weeds, we'd pluck the weed off the top of the ground, and then we'd come back 3 days later and it's regrown. And so my dad one day comes out and he says, "Guys, what are you doing?" I said, "Dad, we're so frustrated because the weeds just keep coming back and this is dumb and we're wasting our time." And he said, "Okay, well, let me show you a trick." So he took the hose out and he ran water over this area of the backyard for a few hours, actually. And so we came back. He said, "Just let it run over there and we'll come back." A few hours later, we came back. He turned off the water. He said, "Now let this sit overnight." Okay. And when we were, after the 3 hours, it was just a pool of water about 2 inches high, just sitting over the soil.
Yeah.
We came back the next morning and the water was gone and the soil looked different. It looked moist. It looked dark, rich. And he said, now try to pull that same weed. And the ability to pull the whole weed and to pull the roots out was like mind-blowing for myself. I was like, why didn't you show me this earlier, Dad? He said, "Well, I think you guys needed to learn this lesson." But what that's become is a picture for me of understanding both for myself personally in my life and in working with others that we have to consider the soil. And when people are hard soil, they're less receptive to feedback, criticism, to being challenged, to being held accountable. But when they're soft soil, they're more receptive both to having things pulled out of them, but also things invested into them. And then the hose and the water became this beautiful picture of my role as a leader, as a coach, whatever, in the life in my marriage, with my kids, with my coworkers, my team members, clients, is to recognize what is the condition of the soil currently, because soil can change. And my job is if the soil is hard, then I need to run water over it, which means I'm gonna pour onto this person love and care and concern and nurture and empathy and compassion and belief into their life, and hoping that the soil softens till they become more receptive and open. And we can get into what that means to build trust and, in human connections. But that just became a really powerful thing. So when I hear this quote that your friend is
Yeah.
sharing, I'm like, first of all, I deeply appreciate it and empathize with that challenge. But I also tell people, sometimes we spend too much time and energy trying to dig in hard soil. And at that point, we have to recognize when that's a waste of our time and energy, and we just need to focus on running the water.
I'm going to take this and continue on this way.
Please.
So when I started to, do the work that I'm doing now in regard to this idea of empathy and insecurity, and came up with the empathy spectrum.
Hmm.
And so I lived on one pole of the empathy spectrum. I was an asshole. I was that hard soil, because if I was that hard soil, then I wasn't going to let something else get, like I wasn't going to get soft and just let it, sink into me in a way. Like I was going to be the hard one to push through. Like I was going to, it's not an exact fit, but I think you're understanding where I'm going.
100%.
And then this is what I also understand the other extent. And this we'll get into the conversation. Like I was that hard soil that I needed. That water came within. Well, that water came spiritually, but it also came from me figuring out and understanding, hey, that water can come within. Well, that didn't come without the belief, the empathy, those two things from others that allowed that water to soak in. Because you coming from Southern California, if it was, you mentioned it, that water would sit on top of the soil for hours. Because that's what happens. It's a hard pan, and it'll just sit there. Much like hard clay, that's what happens. Water sits there. And you have to give it time to settle in. Well, at the same extent, on the other end of the spectrum is the doormat.
Yep.
So just like if you go out there in the middle of the winter rainy season and you got you're up to your knees in mud, it doesn't matter what you're trying to pull, you're stuck. Mm-hmm. And I take your analogy and I love it in this concept, and in my friend that's sharing, it's like that's where, to me, empathy is putting your arms around someone and walking with them. You can't drag them. They can't drag you. You have to be there with them. And part of this, using the story, pulling the weeds, putting the hose out there's sometimes, dude, you got to let it dry out a little bit. Mm-hmm. And part of that is, no, you need to just sit in this and understand what's going on. There are consequences for you deflecting, like what you talked about, the CEO, the executive, the owner, that no, you own the lock, buddy.
Yeah.
No one can turn that key but you. So you have to sit in that and kind of dry out this everything outward. And I think there's a part of our society that is so busy being everyone else is the problem. It's like, no. You got to start with you and take ownership for yourself instead of sitting around and blaming. And I think there's a bit of, that's what we get to do as leaders, is to do that, in my opinion, with empathy, to come along the leader, like you said, and said, hey, I get all these are actual problems. They're real problems.
Yeah. But
your mindset and how you see those problems is 100% under your control.
100%. And Tyler, if it hadn't been for a variety of different people through my life demonstrating what we're talking about, right? Both pouring water over my life from an analogy perspective, and challenging me to take personal responsibility, and then setting healthy boundaries. Like, part of the story I share in one of my books is, because sometimes, and I hate to admit this, but sometimes through my life, I have required a pretty significant wake-up call, right? We know the old saying that it's not until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change that we're willing to change.
Yeah.
Well, in my story with my wife, and when I was, abusing a variety of substances and medicating against all this pain, that she had to sit me down, and she didn't just say this isn't working. She said, "Hey, I need you to move out of the house for a while, and we need to separate." And I remember just like, what? I never thought this was ever going to happen. If this was possible, like, I don't, like,
How did
I'm
we
in this
get
for the
here?
long haul. How
Yeah.
did I get here?
Yeah.
And whether it is through a tough love conversation or whether it's through allowing people to experience the natural consequences of their continued negative attitudes and behavior, that provides that wake up call. But sometimes a wake up call is required before we're willing to recognize the hardness of our own condition, our unwillingness to be open and receptive to receive feedback and to do the work. And so, again,
Yeah.
I tell my clients,
It's great.
I wish this was all really neat and clean and easy, but unfortunately it's not, which is why people like you and I subscribe to these kind of simple but key principles that enable us to engage with others, but to know when to set boundaries, to know when to say, hey, you know what? I've done everything I can with you. I'll keep pouring water over you, but at this point,
Or I
either
need
you,
to turn the water off.
or I need to turn the
Right. And
water
that's
off.
what I
Yes.
that's what I hear is like there's sometimes I've put enough
Yes.
water out there. I need to turn it off and just kind of let whatever happen. And I think there's a piece here. Your wife couldn't have come to you and had that and it not be a wake up call eventually productive without proximity and empathy. Say, hey, I still care about you. And I think that's one of our difficulties is sometimes, especially as leaders. Well, they should just do it because I'm the leader. No, because you have no connection. There's no proximity. You're not displaying any empathy. It's no different. Talking to someone that reports to you or whatever else in your organization that it's like, well, they need to be doing this and like go fire them, consequences, whatever, just, blow up on them. It's like, that's no different than somebody that lives 17 states away that you see something they post on social media and like, how dare they think like that? Your proximity and connection is the same.
That's right.
It doesn't matter. I mean, you can be as far apart and laying in the same bed as you are, a world away. If there's no connection and proximity, there's no empathy. And I think that's what, if I go back to this comment, this interaction from a friend, it's this idea of absolutely we live in a world where people need accountability, but also they need empathy, and it's done through empathy. And if you don't have that connection with them, then you can't be a part of the accountability. You have no proximity, you have no place to. And if you're upset about that, the first thing to do is I need to connect with them. I need to find out what's going on. So that way, if I look at it and say, hey, they either need a boot in the ass or they, need, a hug. Well, you have to develop that through connection. And if you're just spouting off, that's not helping anyone.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's one of the things that that we spend a lot of time with our clients working on, because as these high level leaders, they've built something significant. The team has grown. There's more people involved. And, it's easy to forget that the engine of every business is not its product, its service. It's the people that are having to operate individually and collectively to achieve greater things. But for many leaders, they've never really been trained well as leaders. They just kind of fell into that role or that position. And so what we're talking about is, can we develop what I call a developmental mindset, which is really synonymous with the work of parenting. I don't want to
totally.
overly connect those, but it's this idea that like we all understand as parents, part of our responsibility is to invest into our children at different stages of their journey, to empower them to become more autonomous, to become more responsible, to take their place in life. Hopefully. And I think as leaders, we forget that that's actually part of our core responsibility, is to invest in those that we have authority over, responsibility for, to say, what is my role in partnering with you to become a better version of yourself? And then what we do is we give them a real simple formula. Like, first of all, there has to be a really clear set of expectations that you've set, and expectations are the same as boundaries. Here's what we do, and here's how we do it. And here's the lane. And when you get out of that lane, you get into the gutters, and we don't want to be in there. But then it includes now providing what we call support and challenge. Support
Yeah.
is the care, nurture,
Yeah.
empathy, partnership, time. But
Yeah.
then challenge is the accountability of saying,
Yeah.
but this is the lane that we've
Yeah.
all agreed to operate in. And then what we do with leaders, we remind them, okay, our job is to help people identify when they're in the gutter and to give them a chance to get back in the lane. And we can't make them get back in the lane. That's their choice if they want to do the work. But then we talk about, there's got to be a time where we say, I have brought this to this person's attention. This is no different than what my wife did. I've brought this to this person's attention as often as I can. I've done everything I know how to give them a chance to get back in the lane and get out of the gutter. But over time, we have to determine, but at what point now is this person either unwilling or unwanting or unable to get back in the lane? And we talk about the difference between operating as a liability or as an asset. If you're operating in the lane, you're an asset to yourself and to the environment. If you're operating as a liability, you're a liability to yourself and to the community around you. My wife got to the point where she recognized, okay, I've done everything I can to bring this to his attention, to provide as much support and challenge as humanly possible. But we're getting to the place now where Eric is operating as a liability consistently enough that it is now creating real damage and consequence within the family system. And so when she came to sat with me to say, hey, we need to separate. I need you to move out.
Put such nice words on it.
When she said that, it was, even though it was shock and awe to me,
Yeah.
what I didn't realize till after was, oh my gosh, how long she had endured with me before she said, okay, now I have to set a
Enough.
stronger boundary because there are consequences that are coming out of this that are irreparable if we're not careful. But those are the same principles that we as leaders need to employ. That's the beautiful thing about these principles. They apply in marriage, with your kids, with your friends, with your extended family,
With
your
any
coworkers.
relationship.
Any relationship. Any
You know,
relationship.
You mentioned something and it kind of hit me, whether it's generationally, whether it's, something that you just, we think it should be different, but it's not. We have this difficulty in so many organizations. You hear this from leaders like, I don't want to be your parent. Well, guess what? The reality is we have to go through some of that, which we seem parenting, because it's been evidenced by the result of a generation that these practices weren't happening as parents.
Of course.
And so I think that's something that, as you were saying that, it's hit me, the opportunity, and it's not a responsibility, but it's an opportunity to say, hey, some of these, what I would call general leadership programs, with parenting, yeah, I need to do as a leader.
Yeah.
And you know what? Some of the greatest, I could look through my messages of some people that could be my sons that I've had the opportunity to coach, and some of the responses like, man, I'm glad I get to walk with you in this mentor parenting. Now, I don't have to be responsible for all of it, but I can choose to.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of leaders that are either burnout or they don't think it's their responsibility, or they're trying to play that comparison game where it's like, well, if I was a great leader, I wouldn't have to deal with this.
That's right.
Honestly, great leaders deal with it because they understand that's the best work they will ever do.
100%. I mean, I think the sooner that we realize parenting is leadership.
Yeah.
Like, so if, because obviously most people, there's two things I want to say here. Most often people get into their brains a view of leadership that is tied to a role, a title, or a particular responsibility within a corporation. But if we define leadership as influence and impact at its simplest core, leadership is influence and impact. Right? We lead our friends lead us. We lead our parents lead us. We lead our friends, it's influence and impact.
Yeah.
And the best form of leadership is that we're prepared to leverage everything at our disposal to empower the people around us. That's how we define great leadership. But that's still influence and impact. So if we think of parenting as a form of leadership, here's the problem. When people talk about the principles of parenting and the principles of leading a Fortune 500 company as totally different, that's where people get in trouble. And so here's the thing that, I've fought for decades now in my own life, trying all of these principles and tools that we developed in my own life, in my marriage, and with my family, and my own businesses. But long before we started taking these to leaders outside of our context, it was me desperately trying to figure out, I can't afford to develop all of these different kind of rules of living and operating, that I had to have this for marriage and this for parenting and this for this and this for that and this for this over here. And I honestly, I felt schizophrenic when I was living that way. Inauthentic, totally disintegrated internally. And when I realized, actually, for me to optimize how I operate in any environment so that I am leading well or influencing and impacting the environment more and more as an asset than a liability, it didn't matter if it's in marriage, parenting, leading in a company, or doing whatever else we do. I realized actually it's the same core set of principles that if we subscribe to and practice those in any environment, actually give us far greater outcomes and results. And I don't have to pick and choose, well, which ones apply here and which ones apply there. So that's why we developed what we call this leadership operating system, which is basically a set of core, leadership tools that are rooted in these basic core principles that are not new. I mean, these are the same principles that people have leveraged and tried and tested for generations, that have brought incredible success to every area of their life, but allow them to live in an integrated fashion where they say, I can take this operating system, and it's kind of like a phone. We have all these apps that we can do different things in our life, right? Different areas of our life, finances and calendarizing, working out, and, whatever it is that we do with our apps. But what's interesting, there is one operating system that is a kind of a governing set of software programs, or think of them as principles, that actually make all of the apps work effectively. And so what I realized years ago was I need to figure out what are the core set of life and leadership principles that if I made those my core personal operating system, like they govern and determine and dictate how I operate in any environment, that would allow me to bring a better version of myself and to be an asset to my space. That's what I'm longing for. Spent years learning from people much smarter than me to really create this, what I call a leadership operating system, just because it sounds sexy. Yeah. And I have a lot of respect for Apple.
Here's the wonder is what I gather by this conversation, the way you talked about, your wife calling you out on the carpet, right? Is that your operating system had a virus. It was 100%, broke.
100%.
Where you thought you were, on the path, but yet she came to you and said, hey, it's not computing. Mm-hmm. And, the question that I wonder is for people that are maybe contemplating those things, and what you shared about the operating system is everything, is like, how do you instill people around you that can help you understand that, you've gotten offline here.
Yeah.
Like you need to do a hard reset.
Yes. Or you need, I don't know all the technical language.
Not me neither,
but
obviously.
Sometimes you gotta get an IT person to come in and clean your database, your hard drive, your
shit
operating
up.
system, right? Yes, clean your shit up. Like, so when my wife came to me, it's not that the principles of this operating system are not helpful or not right. It's that I was no longer operating in alignment with them.
Yeah.
Because of my fears, insecurities, brokenness, pain, all that stuff.
And I think as you allude to, and I get it, is like this, whether it was a generational thing or not understanding, hey, it used to be, let's be honest, 25 years ago now, 25 years ago, cell phones were, much in business. You had pagers, but it wasn't everywhere in life. I worked in a business and when I was on call, 24/7, but yet I could still get away. I could not answer my phone. People aren't on, Instagram like, hey, dude, why didn't you answer the phone? I saw you were X, Y, and Z. Like, okay. Anyways, but this world we live in now, I think that has driven us to be more holistically authentic, because if not, we're constantly fighting all of these perceptions. But I think it was easier in the past, a past generation, to almost live with, a different operating system, because you could have an operating system at work, at home, social club, or whatever else, because they weren't integrated. Now
Yeah.
it's all integrated. There is
Yep.
no separation of, in this case, church and state. It's all together.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's figure out how to play together, because you can't be isolated, because our world just doesn't allow it. Our relationships, our interactions don't allow it. It's like, I can't expect you to show up at work and be different than you were the rest of the time. So whoever you show up to work as, I hope it is who you are at home. And it's part of my job to make sure in this congruency, like in regard to this operating system, and part of this coming back to expectations, like, hey, I think it's where we're in so much of a world now. If you hire and align with values, you're going to find tremendously diverse people. And that's what's going to be the better fit, as opposed to trying to fix the game and realizing, no, then people start playing a role that they're really not.
Yeah. Well, think about I'm a big believer that every generation represents strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
Right. And it's normally there's always a tug of war between, the preceding and the following generation.
Yeah.
And the preceding generation, and I experience this a lot with my clients, because, people my age and a little bit older are running stuff right now. And then you've got this new generation of people coming in who literally have looked at their parents' generation and said, yeah, but I see what doesn't work.
Yep.
And what they're pointing at is those areas of disintegration within those people and within the fabric of the culture that led to brokenness, dysfunction, heartache, some stuff that was really negative. And it's easy, of course, to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so the younger generation, like, Mom, Dad, you suck, you're stupid, you don't know anything. And it's not true.
Well, we all want to be different than our parents at a certain age. And then you realize, all right, there's something, like, I wanted to be the parent that would always give my kids ice cream because I couldn't get ice cream when I was little. And then all of a sudden you come to parents like, no, you don't need ice cream. Like, you've had enough.
But here's the thing about what I love about the younger generation. I have to spend a lot of time with older leaders helping them understand this.
Yeah.
But if we'll slow down and take time to listen to the younger generation, they're probably going to reflect back to us the areas of disintegration that have led to these broken systems, relationships, whatever structures. And if we'll listen to them, what they're telling us is, hey, can we figure out a way to integrate more fully and holistically so that we don't have to experience the same maladies that your generation has? And so I think when you talk about how technology and everything else has served to this, but I think what we're dealing with is a generation, multiple generations. If you take, Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen X, or what, not Gen X, but the millennials, and then Gen Alpha
Gen
now.
Z and Alpha, yeah.
Like what they're crying out for is, hey, we're not trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we do need you to pay attention, because we don't want to repeat the same mistakes that you've made. And what they're asking for is there a way of building a life that is more authentic, more integrated internally, that doesn't force us into different forms of mental and emotional schizophrenia, that allows us to be who we are wherever we go? And I love that. I love that.
But here's the thing that is jumping out at me.
Yeah.
What we started the conversation with, right? We can make it better, but it's not going to be easier, because you have to do the hard, because toughness is forged in the hard.
Yep.
So we can make a different result, but you're not going to get there by hitting the easy button on your desk. You're going to have to do the hard.
That's right.
Because if not, you're not going to have the toughness prepare you for whatever does come, because hard will come.
That's right. That's right. And it's different forms of hard. Like the older generations that I work with, a lot of them have kind of adopted this mentality of, I'm an old dog, I can't learn new tricks. This is who I am. Just accept me for. I'm like, whoa, hold on.
They're 37. I'm like,
that's
come
bullshit,
on,
if I'm honest. And that's your hard. Your hard is owning where you didn't parent well, owning where you've created a culture within your organization that is got cracks, and is becoming insecure. The younger generation, they have a different hard, right? Their hard might be, staying committed to relationships or to jobs more, a little bit longer, finding mentors, being willing to work more hours. Maybe it's a work ethic issue. Maybe it's the, learning to sacrifice a little bit more, learning to pay your dues. And, you can't be a social media billionaire overnight. So everyone's got a different hard, but like you said, everyone has a hard. And sometimes what we do is we start comparing our hards and we say, well, your hard is nothing, because that wasn't hard for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And vice
yeah.
versa.
Yeah. Well, that in and of itself gets leaders in a lot of trouble. And it's really this idea, well, it's easy for me, it should be easier for you. It's like, it doesn't work like that.
That's right.
It's hard as whoever hard. Have you read Meditations, Marcus Aurelius? Have you?
I've read snippets back when I was doing my my master's.
I don't know. It was probably like 2 years ago. I started reading books from a generation ago, and I read some Teddy Roosevelt, FDR, from Doris Kearns Goodwin, and then oh shoot, the name is escaping me right now. The president in South Africa, Nelson Mandela. Jeez, my gosh. And now recently, Marcus Aurelius Meditations. And here's what strikes me, especially going back even deeper than, I would say the last century, 1900s, is, man, how everything just revolves. The stuff is funny talking, Marcus Aurelius shared about how the early Roman soldiers, as he was writing, dude, they were entitled. They were like, we don't want to have to fight. We just want to go lounge and, take in the arts and everything else. And he's like, no. And it's just like, here we are. And it's the same. We have this generation. A generation does hard, gritty stuff. The second generation, and I saw this working with farms in California.
Sure.
First generation immigrants. I mean, the stories that I've heard from some, just unbelievable. Came with nothing, came with less than $50 on a boat and like in a new country and are just working their tail off just to make something. And now they have, massive organizations 3-4 generations later. Yeah. But there's the loss in some of those generations where, the first generation works hard, so the second generation doesn't have to. And by the time you get to the third generation, they have no idea what the first generation did, and they're blowing it all on everything.
Yep. You got
and then it's right back into the same hole where the fourth generation is just like, I'm just trying to scrimp to get by. Oh, and, having seen it, but I think the best thing is what you shared, what I've talked about is, invite people into the process of hard, because that's the greatest thing that we can do as a parent, as a leader, as a friend. And what you shared about, like, hey, yeah, I had to go through hard, but you know what? I'm okay. Yeah. And I got people with me, and I have resources, and I can't have someone come in today and change a policy or, give me a special pill or whatever else to make it all better. It's like, I got to do the hard work.
That's right. And to go back to this story with my wife and kids, I couldn't guarantee that my wife would forgive me. I couldn't control whether she'd be willing to let me back into the home. I couldn't control whether my kids were going to forgive me or want to reconcile in these particular areas where they felt wounded. That's the scariest part, is that when we choose to do our own hard work, there's no guarantee that the world around us will suddenly get turn out the way we want to turn out. And that is a part of the cost of doing the hard work, is to say, if nothing else, the only thing I can control is, am I going to do the work to become more of an asset? Because the reality is, my wife could have said, hey, you know what, babe, I love you. We've been married for 20 plus years. This is the last trip around the mountain I want to do with you. I think we're better off not married anymore. That would have been heartbreaking and just wrecked me. But in the midst of the unknown, because so often what do? We do hard work contingent on that we're going to get certain benefits. And I think that the real hard work has to come with no strings attached. We can hope in a better future. We can envision what we're going to benefit from and enjoy on the other side of it. But the most difficult thing about doing hard work is that more often than not, when people don't see the immediate results or things aren't panning out the way they thought they should, they abandon the hard work. Well, that doesn't work. And I go, you know what? The only thing you can guarantee on the other side of hard work is that you will be a better version of you. That's the only thing you can guarantee. That's a very scary proposition for us because of the uncertainty. And even with leaders, when I talk about doing the hard work, well, that doesn't guarantee my executive team or these people are going to respond or people are going to come along for the journey or that these customers are going to come along and say, oh, wow, we do want to do business with you or that your marriage is going to be repaired or that your kids are going to forgive you and want to reconcile. There's no guarantees. And that's the scariest part. But I tell people all the more reason that we have to press into. You have to do the hard work first and foremost for yourself.
There's a piece that I appreciate, again, from our conversation, our friendship, our vulnerability, you feeling safe here to share, not only with me, but with everyone listening, because I asked the question, you answered.
But I don't have to see their faces right now.
No, I mean, I just me looking at you like whatever. But I think there's this element of the toughness and strength are to talk about the things you've talked about, not the bowing your chest, the I'm going to get in people's face. I'm going to, cuss and scream and whatever else. That guy's not tough. He's not tough at all.
Yeah.
Because if he was tough, he'd sit there on the couch and he'd say, this is how I almost lost it all.
Buddy.
This is how hard it really is. And I'm not gonna, puff up and be, this, like, no, that's not tough, dude. The tough is what you just talked about. I'm going to do the hard work and I don't know where it'll get me.
Yeah.
But I know I have to do the hard work as opposed to, I'm going to just, kind of like, remember back in high school, the wrestlers and the football players, I'm tough. And I'm like, no, dude, you're just scared.
That's right. It's interesting. I would say this. I learned this in my 20s. I was working with a mentor and I said to my mentor, I'd read some book on leadership and that one of the core qualities of a great leader is humility. And I said to my mentor, I said, that's what I want to be. I want to be somebody marked by humility. And he looked at me dead serious and said, you be careful about that. I said, why? He said, because humility usually comes through humiliation. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, here's the thing. Humility, deep humility is often born by us having to face our own inadequacies, failures, struggles, brokenness, dysfunction. And it's our willingness to work through those that increases empathy, compassion for others. He said, whenever you see somebody who is not operating with empathy or compassion, it's either because they forgot the journey that they had to go through, or they haven't had to go through that journey yet, or haven't been willing to go through that journey.
Here's something I wrestle with there, Eric, as you say that, and I get it. But I think this is what's given the embrace of humility a bad name. In order to be humble, you have to be humiliated. No, you just have to be authentically vulnerable. I don't have my shit together.
Yeah.
I have problems. I can be intense. I can yell and scream. But and that would be humiliation to someone who's holding on to those elements with pride. If you've given it up, then it doesn't matter. There is no humiliation. You now have like, oh, you're real. Yes, that's not humiliating.
Yes.
And I think that's what, and I'm thinking about this. Humility is not the, oh, look at me. Oh, I've been humiliated. No, Humility is like, yeah, I'm a real person.
Yeah, I appreciate.
I have to look up the word humiliation and really understand it because I love that. Obviously, Tom, I'm getting a little excited, dude. That it's just, I think that's where people struggle with embracing humility is because I think I need to be humiliated. It's like, no, embracing humility is saying pride has no place here.
I couldn't agree more. So let me restate. Let me clarify what I'm trying to communicate. No, I appreciate what you're saying because in one of my books I talk about the importance of humility. I talk about it not as thinking less of yourself or thinking
Yeah.
of yourself less often,
Yeah.
but about having a sober and accurate view of your strengths and your weaknesses
Yeah.
and making peace with it. Right. So that's what you're saying. When I say humiliation, what I mean is that most people think of public humiliation, being ridiculed, scorned. That's not the kind of humiliation I'm talking about. The humiliation.
You want to know the definition of humiliation? I got producer
Well, let
Alex
me let
here.
me just finish what I'm saying. Then now the definition.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
talking about the humiliation that everyone experiences because we are not most humiliated. We don't experience humiliation primarily because of what other people think of us, but because of how we think of us.
Oh.
And so, because we have such a strong protective mechanism for our ego, our fragile egos, and our sense of identity, I don't think it's the people laughing at us that creates humiliation. I think it's because what it does is it exposes that we actually,
We aren't what we thought we are.
you got it. That's the humiliation I'm talking about.
So
And owning it.
humiliation is, let me just read it here, to reduce to a lower position in one's eyes or others' eyes, to make ashamed or embarrassed.
Shitty definition of humiliation.
Well,
Or they
but
need
I
to
think
add one. They need to add
I
one.
mean, maybe, but I think this is what's so important. And, I have a, like a teaching point, the window in the mirror.
Yep.
And it's like, we can look in the mirror and it's a false representation of who we are. The only way we can really see who we are is when we look through the window and someone looks through and say, hey, that's what you are. And I think the difference between being humble and humiliated is humble accepts what is in the mirror in the window are different, and I have to reconcile those two. Humiliated is the mirror in the window. Nope, that's not right. Like the two of them don't reconcile.
Yeah.
And
So
it's
here's
this
what I would say.
idea
It's
where
semantics. I think you and I agree. I think you and I agree. We're on the same page. But I think the word humiliation is difficult. It's no different than when
but I think this
psychological
is what
terms.
society struggles with. Hey, I don't want to be vulnerable because I'm going to be humiliated. I'm going to be embarrassed. They're going to think less of me. It's like what you and I are saying is like, no. If you're authentically vulnerable, you just got a whole lot of strength because that guy comes alongside of you and says, man, thank you so much. You're real. Now I trust you.
Okay, let me say this. I think the real core for human beings is they don't want to think less of themselves. Other people thinking less
Because
of you
we're in
only
such this
challenges your
competition.
view.
We're in such this competition. If I think less of myself and all of a sudden my standing means that, all of a sudden it's like this acceptance that I'm not as good as what I thought I am. And so therefore you're not going to value me, which that doesn't matter anyways. And
But
I had to learn that. I mean, I look at my son who's going through that right now. It's like, dude, you are what you are. You can either embrace that and work on it, or you can have this image that's not the case, and that's what's going to lead you to humiliation.
Yeah.
Or you can be humble and you are what you are and great. And, it's kind of like, great, how can I make the most of what I am? Now you're on the right path.
And then what if we added the other side of the coin of humility, which is if we think of humility as a sober and accurate view of who we are, strengths and weaknesses, the good and the bad and the ugly.
Yeah.
The opposite is true. Too many people are operating out of an unwillingness to own who they are and their value and all their strengths and their abilities and their skills and what they bring to the table. That's why I say, I think humiliation, I use that as a word because I think that's what we experience when we have an overestimated view of ourselves. But
One that gets shattered.
But I also think there is an experience of humiliation that people feel having to step into and own because people have begin to develop an identity around I'm not good enough. I don't bring anything to the table. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's all humiliation. It's all about disrupting our identity, our sense of who we are, self-worth. And I think what I tell people is real humility is practiced in the freedom of knowing who we are for better and for worse, accepting it, which then allows us to live life playing our cards and letting the chips fall where they may. So it doesn't matter like which side we're coming from, whether I need to right size my view of myself, and that is having a more sober and maybe a diminished view of what I can bring to the table, but it's more accurate and sober, but it's only diminished from where I wished I was, who I wished I was, or who I thought I could be, or the other direction, which is people having to own and step into who they are and what they bring. I think either side of that journey leads us to humility, which is an expression of I've made peace with who I am for better and for worse today. I can't be who you wished I was. I can't be who I was yesterday. I can't be who I'm going to be tomorrow. All I can be is who I am today, and the more accurate and accepting I am of who I am today. That's what gives me freedom to bring who I am to the table without all the game that we play of projecting this and wanting to be perceived this way, and the comparison and the not feeling like I'm enough and not knowing if all that is a game that we get caught in that doesn't allow us to bring our truest, most authentic self to any experience.
Can I share a framework I'm working on?
Please.
It fits right into this. It's being your best by bringing out the best in others.
Oh, I like that
best,
too.
It's the best framework. So it's BEST, right? Be aware. Be aware of yourself. What you just talked about, what strengths you are, what you are.
Yep.
Help someone else do the same. That as a leader, your role is to accept yourself, but then someone else. The next is that's enough. Whatever it is, that's enough.
Yeah.
Once you're aware and you say, this is what I'm good at, that's what you're good at, Eric, that's enough. That's enough.
Yeah.
The S, serve. Now go serve. How can you serve someone with it? And this fits into what you were just saying. The T. Ready for it? Timing. I can be the best version of me today, but it doesn't mean it's the right time and place in this relationship. I need to let that water soak in. I need to let it dry out. And when I come tomorrow and I bring my best, that's the right time for it, because that brings out the best in everything else. So it's how do we bring out the best in others by bringing out the best, in ourselves? Is be aware. That's enough. Serve and timing.
I love it. I love it. I love it. The way that I'm going to slightly illustrate what you're saying, but
Slightly, okay.
I'm stuck on this. I'm stuck on this humility thing. Here's an illustration. I give this example to people all the time. When I go to meet with a prospective client, and I'm going to spend some time with them, before I go into those meetings, I suffer from all the same struggles that any other human being does. Do I have what it takes? When I'm bringing enough? Are they going to like me? Are they going to want to work with me? Am I going to get a contract out of this? And now the temptation is to go in one or two opposite directions, or what I call the gutters on either side of humility, which is one extreme is, well, I've got to be this, and I've got to present this, and I've got to be the smartest guy in the room, and I've got to talk a lot, and I've got to show off, and I've got to now I'm falling into the temptation in one gutter, which is I've got to present a view of myself that is not honest and accurate, but because I'm trying to get them to see me in a way that will somehow endear me to them or secure a contract. Or the opposite gutter,
the insecurity
is I go in out of insecurity and fear, and so I withhold whatever I do have to bring because I'm afraid it's not going to be enough, and they're going to think I'm stupid or I'm not valuable, and I won't. In the same result.
Yeah. Insecurity lies in both gutters.
You got it. And I said, what I have to do is I have to coach myself every time I go into one of those sessions or into a coaching session where I'm feeling nervous. I have to go and coach myself the same way. Eric, all you can do is practice an honest and sober view of who you are today. The best parts of you and the worst parts of you.
Yeah.
Like I tell people, I had to continue coaching and working with prospective clients even after my wife kicked me out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to show up in my most humiliated internal experience of like, I cannot believe my marriage is on the brink of potential divorce. And now I'm trying to show up and give these people something of value. Who the heck? But I have to go, you know what? But I have spent years cultivating all this stuff in my life. And yes, this is a difficult season, but I've got to show up with not just the bad right now, but all the good. That I have cultivated in myself over these years. And I have to be honest about that. I have to show up, and here's what I'm going to do. I have to own all that, accept that's who I am today. I can't control where my marriage is going to be tomorrow or where my relationship with my kids will be tomorrow. Thank God it's all great now. But at
Yeah.
that point, I can't control that. And therefore, all I can do is play my cards, the cards that I do have, not the ones I wish I had, not the ones that I think if I could just pull a random ace out of my sock, that would really do it. I got to play the cards that I have today. I got to bring who I am today and let the chips fall where they may, because I can't control whether I will endear myself to them. I cannot control whether they'll want to work with me. All I can do is fight to bring the most genuine, authentic, and real version of myself, the most integrated. Because what people don't like about integration is it requires an integration between the good and the bad and the ugly. All I can do is bring the most integrated version of myself to this space and hope that I can be an asset more than a liability. That's it. And then I got to let the chips fall where they may. Can't control the outcomes, can't control how they're going to receive me, how they're going to hear me, how they're going to experience me. That's all I can do. And I think that's the reason I'm so passionate about this humility conversation, because I think when people ask me, where does real confidence come from? Genuine confidence, I say, it's the work you do toward this view of humility. Because real confidence is rooted in, I believe, bringing what you have to the table and not knowing whether you have a winning hand. Because sometimes I have a winning hand in the room and sometimes I don't. But my confidence comes from knowing who I am and the value that I bring.
Yep.
Also knowing that I'm still working through my own shit.
Yeah.
And saying, this is what I got today, guys.
Yeah.
That's confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. And being okay to say that's enough.
That's enough. I love that. I'm stealing that, by the way.
Yeah, just go for it, dude. Make it better. Hey, you have a book coming out. So where can people get that? Where can they learn more about that?
This book is called Upgrade Your Leadership. So I was referencing this leadership operating system. And the first couple books, we took a couple of the tools and just kind of put them out there in book format to see how they played. And we had such a great response. And people kept saying, especially clients, hey, where's the rest of the toolkit that we've been learning? We want these in book format. And so this book will be, it'll be in pre-order here soon. And people can find this at our website, MPWR Coaching, which is empower without the vowels, empower coaching, or mpwrcoaching.com. And we've been working really hard this whole winter and spring to record a bunch of online training videos, basically taking all the stuff that we utilize and do with our clients and our coaching process that is just proven incredibly transformative and helpful. And we're just trying to make it available to more people. So that's the book. It's got the whole toolkit. And I tell people, if it sucks, use it as a coffee.
Dude, it won't
coaster.
suck. Come on. Like,
Give it to
come
somebody
on.
else.
It won't suck. It doesn't suck. Come on. Your false humility sucks.
You're right. I received that. I received that.
Good. Hey, Eric, thank you so much. Thank you for being
buddy,
here.
this was fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation. And for everyone watching on YouTube, you got a special treat watching on YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to notify whenever we release new content. One more thing. If you can rate and review this episode wherever you listen to it, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it may be, it will help more people find impactful leaders like Eric. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time, Eric. Until next time, choose to lead with impact.